Alrighty. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another Wednesday edition of the stream. Today, as we do every Wednesday, we will be doing some portfolio feedback. So folks have shared their wonderful portfolios with me, and I will just be taking a look at them and offering some feedback, some advice, doing a light heuristic analysis and design analysis and content analysis, and just kind of giving some helpful feedback, as always. So great. So tonight we have three portfolios, and first up we have Clint's portfolio here. So let's go ahead and give this page a refresh because it does have some nice animations when we load the page here. So that's pretty cool, right? We've got this kind of nice animation in the center here, and then this kind of fade in from the background. Look at that, another refresh just to take another bit of a look at it. And great. And so right off the bat, it's got kind of your most important information there. We know this is Clint's website. He's a software engineer. Thank you, Clint, for the follow. I appreciate it. We've got this background in here, which is already giving us a lot of personality. It might seem like something simple, but the rural mountain aesthetic here tells us a lot about Clint almost subconsciously. What else do we have here? We've got the GitHub profile and the LinkedIn profile. So those are pretty great. If you're looking at a software engineer's portfolio, those are probably two pieces of information that you'd like to learn a little bit more about. And then we've got some links down here to some additional pages. And this is it, right? So there's nothing else scrollable here. So it doesn't necessarily need an affordance that there's more information here, just because this is where it's at. Let's see, what else do we have from a design perspective? We've got Reach Me with some email information, which I think if anyone's trying to get in touch with you, that's great. It's a touch small relative to all this information, which I think is great because you're kind of trying to keep that text hierarchy that you've got going on here. But it could be easy to miss if somebody just kind of glanced at the page quickly. And then the reference to the template, which I think is nice. You're kind of saying, giving credit where credit is due, which I think is a nice touch as well. It shows a level of maturity within your design. And then I like this sort of developer symbol, the code symbol up here, kind of reinforcing that you are a developer, and this is a developer portfolio. For folks who might not know what that symbol is, that might seem a little weird, just because they just don't have a mental model or an understanding of it. But for the folks who do, I think this is a really quick way to grab their attention here. So it's a simple landing page for the portfolio, but it's got all the important information here. So not tons of feedback, and we can kind of take a look at how this stacks kind of responsively there. And I think that stacks nicely. You've got all the information up here. You don't really have to worry about any sort of scrolling issues or anything like that. So this is looking pretty good. And I just kind of noticed your fav icon and then also your title information here. So reinforcing the code icon, that's kind of a nice touch as well. And that's a pretty cool fav icon. I hope that's an illustration of yourself. So yeah, that's looking pretty good here. So let's take a dive into some more of this information here. Before we do that, though, I think software engineer is great. That's kind of labeling who you are and what you do. Maybe having a sentence there instead of just the job title might just be a little bit more information, a little bit more context for the user. So really focusing in on your unique value proposition and what value you're bringing to the table. And I know those are super hard to write, but it would just provide just a touch more context and another opportunity to show that personality. And that might just be slightly more effective than software engineer. But I kind of like what you're doing there with the text hierarchy kind of sloping down towards the navigation, kind of a reverse pyramid, so to speak. So that works, I think, within your overall design. So if you wanted to include a little bit more content there, I think that would be appropriate. So let's take a look at some of these projects here. Okay, nice. And that was a pretty slick animation there. Kind of fading out and then bringing this kind of modal window here to the beginning. So let's look at these projects here. So we've got Bevy Loans, which is on GitHub here. Lambda Notes, which is great. We've got some site content here. We've got all sorts of additional information here. Great, Clint. Glad you're taking notes. That's awesome. So one thing that kind of strikes me here is the letter spacing is pretty large here. You might want to consider reducing it, just because it becomes harder to read as we increase the letter spacing or the tracking or kerning. I guess this would be tracking in between each of these letters here. So that's just kind of one thing that strikes me right off the bat. This kind of hover effect is pretty cool here. I don't know if this is clickable or not. So that's like an affordance. Like it makes me think that this is clickable versus, but my mouse doesn't change and I don't get the link in the bottom corner here. So maybe considering picking one or the other and not having the hover effect. Like I know it's a cool effect, but that just it screams like an affordance for clickability, and then it's not an interactive element. So that kind of caught me off guard there. Let's see here, bevy loans. I think this is all nice. Talking about the business case, that's always a really nice point to address. Like, what is the rationale behind the project? I think that provides a lot of really nice context sometimes for your projects, and so that's a really nice piece of information here. You've kind of got business case though, and some technical highlights here, and that kind of really blends in with your overall text. So maybe making this bold or italicized or something like that, just to slightly separate it from the rest of the information, or even making it like a header for this section, I think will help add some more visual interest and clearer scannability as well for this information. Tech stack, I think that's great to kind of include what technology you've used here, and then we've got the GitHub link, which is great. I think labeling where what action this is or where this will take somebody is a really nice touch as well. And then here, maybe adding a little bit more spacing here. So let's see if I can finagle this a little bit with my tool here. Oh, that's not going to work. Maybe because this is too interactive, and that's okay. Let's see. Let's just give it a refresh here. But bumping the padding here, because right now this all like kind of flows into each other, and it's really hard for me to tell like, is this part of this? Or is this part of Lambda notes? Like I had to actually look at the content. The visual hierarchy is not distinguishing it for me. So just a little bit more padding in between these elements here, I think would be really helpful. So let's pop open sort of our developer tools here and see if we can't add a little bit of maybe padding or something like that. Let's see. Where do we go here? Lambda notes. So maybe we could say margin top, say 4M. Oh, I guess I'm doing this here. Actually, that's fine if we do it like that. Oh, maybe not 16, but let's say like 7. Let's say 7. And just it breaks up the maybe not the first one. You can kind of use your CSS selectors there a little bit better. But this breaks up the information a little bit better. You've kind of established more of a visual hierarchy, and so the information it's groups, right? And so it's kind of the Gestalt principles at play here, a little bit of proximity and white space and all that good stuff. And so this kind of appears as a separate entity relative to the other projects in here. So that would just be something to consider. What else is going on? I don't know if this is just me or it looks like this is not exactly aligned. The image is not exactly aligned with the header. And that could just be me. There could just be some padding on this or something. Yeah, it looks like there's a very small amount of padding actually on the image itself. Maybe? Let's look. It could just be me. Or maybe the width for whatever reason isn't going all the way. Or the image itself. That could be what's going on here. The image itself just has a little bit of transparency in the background there. That's not letting it go all the way to the edge of the line there. So going back to your imaging or your cropping tool and making sure that you've kind of really highlighted the edge of the image will make sure that this is aligned. Will help bring a little bit more visual consistency, because it's just something that kind of feels like you're jumping around a little bit there on the side. And then the same note here with the letter spacing, just making it consistent with how you handle the projects up here, I think will go a long way. But overall, this is pretty nice. We've got a lot of information here and ways for people to find this content here. So I think this is looking pretty good. Now let's hop over to experience. Okay, cool. And this is kind of the same sort of system here. And basically, I think I've got the same feedback here. Making sure that all of your like little pieces of information, so your project manager, sourcing agent, they kind of blend together. So making sure that they're a little bit more distinguished from each other, I think would be super, super helpful, just so people can scan this information a little bit easier. What else here? Maybe consider putting this, the time information. Maybe that could go over somewhere over here on the other side of project manager. Because right now, just kind of it gets a little lost within this information. It's the same size, or maybe considering like italicizing it or something like that. Because right now, it's just getting a little lost with the rest of this information. So bringing some more visual scannability or something like that would be useful. And then the logos I think are great. Maybe considering putting the logo on top of the header, kind of like how you were doing on the projects. Would have a little bit more consistency between these sections, but also make this information just feel a little bit more grouped as well. But that's something you can play with. I don't know unless I play around with it, so that's just an idea. But overall, this is looking really great here. There's a lot of white space in between your bullet and your text here. That could be something to play with too. Maybe white space is good normally, so it's super awesome and something we definitely want to look for here. But this just feels a little wider. Oh, great! I'm glad you're liking it here. That's what this is for. It's for the feedback. So I'm glad it sounds useful. So that would just be something to consider. And then looking at this a little bit closer here, it looks like your line height here is a little larger than your paragraph height, and so you actually kind of have the opposite effect of what you want. So just kind of consider making your what are these? Your LIs have a little bit more margin on the bottom, and then making sure your line height is less than whatever that margin is going to be within all those LIs. So your bullets have more spacing than the actual line height does within the text. So let's take a look at that in the code here. So we can open that up, line height. Let's see, that looks like it was getting overridden there. Let's just say something like this. So we set that, maybe not 1, but 1.2 or something like that. And then we'll just grab a new element style. And we'll just say like margin, bottom, maybe not 1M, but 0.5 or something like that. And all of a sudden now you've got just the text hierarchy here is just a little bit clearer, right? This looks like it's related to each other, as opposed to it kind of having the opposite effect, where this sentence felt related to this one because it was closer, and this one was related to that one because they were closer to each other. So these are just little details to kind of consider to really polish up your text hierarchy here. Alrighty, let's look at the about section here. Nice. So photo yourself. I think that's really awesome. It shows a little bit of personality. Just the same feedback here on your about section. Great. This is all good. Hyperlink looks good. Having some references is always super helpful here. I think that's awesome. If you can, maybe consider, I don't know, wrapping the text to on the side of the picture a little bit more. It might just reduce your vertical height a little bit, so everything's just a little faster to scan and read. But that's just me kind of being a little nitpicky. I think you can go whatever direction you want to go with it. I think this referencing section has a little less letter spacing than the about section up here, and this I could probably do with just a hair less, but this is on the right track here. It's just a little bit more readable and easy to grok. So I think that's great. And also consider here, like, it's easy to miss Josh or Brandon's names here. So maybe you put their name below or next to their image, and then kind of have the text on the right-hand side. So it's like, okay, this is very clear that this is or Brandon. I hope I'm saying his name right. And so that would be just a little bit easier for the user to kind of scan and look and find the relevant information here. So this looks pretty great. And then contact, that's the last kind of piece here. Yeah, I think this is super straightforward. Nothing really jumping out at me, kind of saying we need to fix something. This all looks good. I like how you're kind of slightly increasing the contrast by having it fade in a little bit more when it's focused. I think that's a really nice touch there. It looks like this message isn't getting as much of that background, so maybe consider making that a little bit more consistent. We got the reset button here. I never, with the form this small, it seems like a little, let's see if this is, it seems like a lot to kind of have a full reset functionality here. So maybe this could be cancel instead, and it would just close the modal. But again, that's your call. It's your site here. But that would just be kind of a suggestion. But you've got your affordances correct. Like this send message should be the primary call to action, and then this is secondary. So the buttons look different enough from each other. So that looks great. We've got our social icons here, which is perfect. Awesome. And that's looking really good. One thing I noticed here, and I just caught my eye, is that it looks like there's something going on. Actually, that could be because I was messing with the code a little bit. Yeah, so that's what that was. I was like, I don't remember seeing that earlier, that spacing. So that looks like it was just coming from me. Awesome. Well, great site here. I think it looks really good. You've got a lot of good content here, a lot of good information. The mobile approach is an interesting one. Definitely something to experiment and play around with here. I think it works nicely to keep your landing page or your first experience really simple and clear and condensed, and then the user can then go out and find the additional information. So this looks really nice. So great job, Clint. Hopefully that feedback was helpful for you, and you do with it what you will. Right? This is all free, so whatever you want to do with it. Great. So let's keep on rolling here. Alrighty, now we've got Kamry's portfolio here. So let's give this a little bit of a refresh, because I know this had a little bit of animation here as well. Let's give this another refresh here. So we've got a lot going on here. There without any of those things. Thanks again. Oh, no problem, Clint. I'm glad it was useful, and hopefully it sparked a whole bunch of ideas here for you. So let's see here. So we've got Kamry's site. So right off the bat, boom, this is Kamry Bowman. We're talking about web development. I build websites with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Node, Express, Python, SQL. And of course, we've got the little dude. I hope that's Kamry typing away here. And I think this is awesome. It's got so much personality. It's really simple, right? There's no like color here. That's kind of black and white and a little bit of gray here for the hair. So the color palette, very limited, very focused. When you're playing with black and white and you're just using those colors, you can actually be really effective in your UI design. It kind of has a nice sense of like elegance and professionalism. It's really hard to pull off well, but it looks like so far that this site is doing a nice job here with the color palette. So it's a bold choice, but it's working so far, and I'm really excited to see the rest of it here. So let's see here. So we've got the portfolio, we've got the blog, we've got the About Me, and I bet if we refresh this a little bit more, those all kind of slide in nice, which is pretty awesome. It's a little bit unconventional for a navigation, but I think it works within the context of your site and what you're trying to accomplish here, so I think it's okay. Sometimes we kind of say like, oh, our navigation should really be externally consistent or similar to how other people's websites are being presented, just because that way your users kind of have an inherent sense of familiarity with how our site's going to operate. With portfolios, you can really play with it and experiment a little bit more than you might normally be able to do in sort of a production app or something like that for a brand or a product. So I think this is working really nicely here. And of course, we've got our social icons. We've got the GitHub link. We've got Twitter. We've got LinkedIn here. We've got the copyright down here. This should be 2019, but that's okay. I know sometimes you hard code it and you forget about it. I always write just like a little bit of JavaScript or PHP or whatever I'm working in, and just kind of have it render the current year for me. So that's just a little trick to make sure that I never have to worry about keeping it updated again. So this is looking really nice here, and I like kind of how you've brought your skills to the fore here, really highlighting who you are and what you do. So I think this is a really nice touch, and it's really creative, right? Like I can't think of many other portfolios that kind of have this design approach. So already I think you're doing a nice job distinguishing yourself from the competition out there. But we can kind of take a peek at how this works on mobile devices responsively. Nice. I think this looks pretty good. You might want to touch more white space around the edges here. Maybe not necessarily up top, but maybe down here a little bit more, just to make everything feel a little bit more breathable. A little bit more white space might go a long way. But overall, this looks really nice. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and take a peek at the portfolio. Oh, cool. That's a fun navigation system. And it's different, but I think it works. Some projects I've worked on, so this is nice. So this feels really stacked right here. Just kind of having all this information in with so tight and so narrow. So, oh, what just happened here? I just lost my other screen as I was looking at the question here. So why bother putting a copyright notice? You have a copyright with that one. Do any major sites bother with it? I think a lot of sites do the copyright notice. I can't remember if I have one on my site. Sure, you can. I think you're right. I think you do implicitly have one, but it's just kind of a way to signal to people like, hey, I'm taking this seriously. So treat this like a real site here. I can't remember if I'm doing it on my website or not. Yeah, I've got the copyright symbol. I think a lot of sites do this. Let's take a look at Stripe, or I guess Streamlabs came up, but we'll take a look at Stripe. Yeah, they've got the copyright here. I think a lot of sites do this, just as a way to kind of put people, let people know that hey, we're taking this very seriously. and this should be treated professionally. So it's kind of like signaling for that aspect. I don't know if you could actually go out and take legal action if somebody was in breach of your copyright or anything like that. But it just kind of a signal more than anything, in my opinion. So what are we talking about here? Yeah, so maybe making the padding within the box here a little bit less intense. So let's see if we can tweak that a little bit and see if it'll work here. Yeah, so this section here. So we got some width going on. Let's see. Padding. For some reason, it's not letting me edit this. Okay. Padding. Maybe we'll make this like 20 pixels all around. Maybe more like, yeah, 50 and 100 pixels. Something like that. Maybe more like 75. I don't know. I'm just trying to do this on the fly here, so I would definitely play with this a little bit more. But yeah, so I think this just kind of makes, it saves you some vertical spacing, which is nice. So you kind of have more room for the rest of your content. It prevents all this information here from being stacked on top of each other, which again, I think just makes it easier to read. We don't normally read information like text like that. We read in sentences. So yeah, so I think that will help a bunch. And then below is a collection of projects I've worked on. They use a variety of tech stacks, so they all seem to involve JavaScript somewhere. I think that's a nice thing to talk about and mention, that you're kind of a little bit more JavaScript focused. So that's some good content there. With this much text here, the first thing that jumps out at me is like maybe this should be left aligned as opposed to center aligned, just because once you get beyond a sentence or two, it really becomes hard to read a lot of information here, and we keep talking about this, like your saccades and how your eye tries to find the line every time. It could be a little bit taxing, so definitely kind of thinking about, okay, maybe I left align this, and even adding like a little bit more line height here, I think will really help go a long way towards making it just a little bit easier to read as you're scanning it. So yeah, so that just kind of adds a little bit more breathability to the interface here. It makes it a little bit easier to grok and parse here. I like the GIF here. I think that's a nice approach. It kind of shows a little bit of the functionality of whatever or the site here that you built. So I think that's really nice. Oh, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. And then the visit link I think is good. You've got enough of an affordance here. Maybe putting the visit after the technology here and making that like the bottom call to action, the last thing that they see, would be useful. But again, that's more of a choice, and you can kind of take that as you will. And then with this list right here, I think the list is great. I would still consider maybe making this left aligned as well. So let's see here if we can do the text align and then left, and just kind of maybe playing with the spacing a little bit more, the padding beneath each of them. That's just something to consider here as well. So maybe we could do like margin bottom 8.5 m or so, or maybe not that much, but just a little bit more, so these don't feel like they're stacked right on top of each other. That'd just be one other little thing I would consider. Yeah, so we can go through all these, and they following sort of the same style here, so all of that applies. Obviously, try and keep it as consistent as you can. That goes a long way to promoting people's understanding of your website. And great, so this whole section is looking really nice. Kind of keeping with your understanding of or your visual aesthetic here, I think works really well. And maybe even, I don't know, moving away from maybe having the gray background and only doing the white background. That's just something I thought about, just because that seems to be more consistent with your overall design. But that's a stylistic choice, and you can kind of decide to go one way or another here with that. And it looks like I didn't even notice these. We've got some JavaScript icons here, so you can scroll between them. I missed this, honestly, until I just kind of noticed it as I was playing around. So if you want this to be like a little bit more prominent or something like that, I think that would be useful. But again, just something to consider here. I think it's a nice touch. It shows your mastery of JavaScript as well. So, okay, let's keep on rolling here. So we got home, about me, blogs. Let's go to the about me. And it's kind of nice how you're bringing the about me to the forefront, or whatever the page that you're looking at here to the forefront. That's kind of a nice touch, and really emphasizing it, making it very clear that this is the page that you're looking at. So I think that's a good intuition there. There's something to be said for keeping it in the same order. That way the user doesn't have to like process the navigation every time they look at it. But I think stylistically, you don't have a ton of pages. It shouldn't be that hard for the user to kind of figure it out. And you have enough visual separate distinction here that I think you can get away with this approach. Let's see here. Kamry, working in JavaScript. Yeah, so this is looking really nice. It's a nice little block of text here. It is a little tricky to read here with its typeface. Sometimes reading bold for this length of information can just be a little overwhelming. So let's see here if we can tweak this a little bit. So let's see if we can do font weight. Maybe like, or maybe that's just the font being used. Yeah, it doesn't seem to want to change. But that's okay. So maybe just consider using a slightly lighter font, so that way it's just a little easier to read. But I think one thing that will go a long way to helping the overall readability might be playing with the line height a little bit more. That's something we've kind of played with a couple of these portfolios tonight. Line height really helps improve the overall readability. So making sure that you're considering that within your long blocks of content here, that would be another idea there. Yeah, I need to bring in another font, maybe one with more potential variation. Possibly, yeah. I think the font works really well for headlines and big pieces of content here. It's a really bold font. But yeah, that's something that I would consider here. I notice you're not actually checking out the content of any of the portfolio examples. Is it not important exactly what they are, just that you have them? Kind of feels like recruiters and hiring managers will also just scroll through them quickly. Yeah, I think that's a really great question here. I'm not really diving too deeply into them, just in the interest of time, just to make sure that we take a look at all of them. I think content is something that deserves your full attention and should be really polished and considered. And so I wouldn't want to do like a subpar job because I'm trying to go quickly. So I would like to just come back and reread it on my own here. So that's why I'm going quickly. I think it depends on the hiring manager. Sometimes they'll probably scan quickly, and that's why I like making sure that your projects are scannable and they have a lot of contextual information that people can just kind of find what they're looking for very quickly is important. But if it grabs their attention, all of a sudden they're going to want to learn more about it. And so having those links to like see a little bit more information or to go see the project itself is really useful, because then they can go and find that additional context if it strikes their fancy, if it's something they want to look at a little bit more. So the context is really important because it kind of draws them in, and then they can say, I'm interested in this. I want to know a little bit more about this. And then you can go look it up in the either you're providing like a full case study, and that will have a lot more of the contextual information and kind of the process and what you're doing. And I think those should be are great and really powerful tools to show your thought process and how you would approach a project. And so, I think those can be really powerful signaling tools to recruiters and hiring managers that not only are you qualified enough to build what it is you've built, but you think a lot and you've put the thought process and you've done the work, the pre-work that's necessary to build something great. So I tend to think that content is really important. It's probably the most important part of any interface or experience. And so making sure it's scrollable, making sure you can grab the hiring manager's attention, I think is really important here. But you're right, they do they've got to look at hundreds of these, right? So the more you can grab their attention and be visually interesting, I think the more successful you will be. So great question. Let's see here. Yeah, a nice call to action here. Kind of breaking this up, not doing it exactly an email link here, probably for spam purposes. I know bots can crawl these sites and grab your email, and then you're getting all those spam emails. So nice. This is looking really good. And let's look at we looked at portfolio, right? So that was, I came back up here, and because I had been away from it, I had lost my context. And so I needed to read through all the options again, versus if they had been in the same spot, that would have been good. Hello, is it alive? I believe it's alive here. This looks like a live site. You can go to KamryBowman.com and find out all the information here. So blog. Let's go check out the blog here. Okay, cool. And this looks like it's redirecting to an entirely different site here, which I wasn't prepared for necessarily. I see what you're asking for. So thanks for sharing your site. I will look at it next time because we've already got this lineup of folks here. But yeah, if you if you want me to, oh, no need to review the blog. Okay, no worries, Cam. But yeah, thank you. I will review that next time for sure. Cool. So this is good. One thing to note here is that, oh, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. So what was I going to say here? One thing to note, so sometimes when you have links here that are internal to your website, and then you have one that hyperlinks out, the user doesn't know that just by looking at this, right? So sometimes you can include like a little icon here, like kind of the link out icon. It's like the box with the arrow kind of checked out into it. Just so that way the user kind of has a sense like, oh, this is taking me to a different website or a different piece of information, as opposed to this being part of the same website. So that would just be one thing to consider here, because I was a little like, oh, what's going on here? So that would just be one small little thing that you can consider here. But overall, this is really nice. I think you've got a lot of personality here. It's very different from a lot of other portfolios that I've seen, but I think that works for you. Anytime you can kind of distinguish yourself in this crowded portfolio space, the more you can kind of help yourself stand out. So I think that's great. Let's see, we had another question here. Nice, makes sense. In that same vein, how important is it to have an active GitHub or give links to actual code or working projects? In particular, I've got a few projects I made for another company, so the best I can provide are pictures or GIFs. Can't release it or the code. Yeah, and that's a real challenge. I know in my career as well, I have tons of projects and tons of code that I think I would love to share, but I just can't because I don't own it. It's the company's code. And so in those cases, yeah, if you have the pictures and you kind of walk people through the process, or maybe like there was a really challenging problem and you kind of came up with a cool way to solve it, talking and discussing that problem either in a blog post or a case study, I think those are really great opportunities for you to kind of extract the knowledge or the experience out of that sort of walled garden that is the job, and then present it in an interesting and engaging way to careers or to hirers and hiring managers. And how important is it to have an active GitHub or give links to actual code or working projects? So I think it's like moderately important. I think it's just a signal. And the more signals you have working in your favor, probably the more successful you can be. But it's not the be all end all, right? I know if I looked at my GitHub right now, it doesn't have like any kind of projects or code on it, or like that hot streak. Part of that was I worked on a bunch of repos at work, and then I got taken off of them when I left the job, and then all of my activity streak left, right? And so I don't have that on my profile anymore. And so that's kind of frustrating, and then some folks I know use Bitbucket or other version management systems where you don't actually get that activity streak. So again, it's kind of the pros and cons here of that. So I think if you can list your skills out and have a conversation with a hiring manager and kind of say like these are interesting problems that I've solved, or this is a project that I worked on and how we solve the client or the stakeholders' needs. That's super important. That's really fundamental. And then the more you can point people in that direction, either through GitHub or an active code or working projects, I think that's just kind of like supplemental information that's important, but not necessarily as required as that fundamental experience. So yeah, hopefully that gives a little bit more insight there. So this is great. So thank you, Kamry, for sharing with us. I really appreciate it. All right, and we've got Xander's profile here. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. So what do we have here? We've got sort of this navigation here, intro skills, work experience. That's kind of clever. And then socials here. And then we've got your profile here. And then you've got your name, tag, sort of what you do, and then a little bit more information, project skills, dev, work experience. Awesome. So let's kind of jump into this here and take a little thought about what we have here. So one thing that kind of strikes me right off the bat is that this content right here it's kind of a little like, I don't want to say it kind of just feels off. And that's because you've got this kind of staggered alignment along the side, but you also have like the staggered alignment over here as well. So fixing up the alignment, I think, will go a long way to making this look a little bit more consistent, and hopefully a little bit more professional as well. No worries about hijacking the review. I think we're here to talk, right, and have a conversation in the chat as well. So feel free to ask your questions, and or if you're looking for a point of clarification, that's why I'm here. It's not so much me preaching out. It's whatever the conversation is, and obviously we're gonna review the portfolios, but this is a conversation as well. So what was I saying here? So yeah, so just making tidying up the alignment here and the overall consistency, I think will go a long way to making this look a little bit more professional. So let's take a look here. Let's take so let's see what's going on. So we've got this section here, and then this looks like, so that's aligned right. Let's see if we can say this is text aligned left. Let's see. I'm wondering, kind of hard here. So that's is it not display block or something like that? Why your cap lock's on? Alrighty, let's just make the margin right. Oh, there we go. So that kind of tidies that up a little bit more. And then again, we keep seeing these line height considerations, and it's really like I think designers think about it a lot, but maybe not necessarily developers. And so that's just one thing to kind of consider here. All right, and right off the bat, we've kind of cleaned this up a little bit more. We've added some line height here. We just kind of left aligned everything, and it's just already starting to feel a little bit more professional. And I don't think you necessarily have to align this to the content down here, but you can if you want. Let's just try that, just kind of see how it feels here. So let's see, and we'll just say left for the sake of argument. Yeah, and then if we kind of played with the spacing a little bit more, I'm sure we could really get a sense here of, let's see, margin top, minus 10 pixels. So maybe that's 30, and then this down here could be, and this is not how I would code this in the wild. I'm just doing this more just so I can do it quickly. Yeah, so maybe something like that. And so we're just kind of focusing on that text hierarchy a little bit more, just kind of make it a little bit more scannable, easily approachable for the user. I think will go a long way towards making it just a little bit more professional, a little bit tidier, and that can kind of help people. So yeah, so this is already looking great. We've got intro, skills, and these look like they're anchor tags. Yeah. Okay, so if you clicked on that, you scroll down. Nice job using JavaScript there instead of just jumping. It just kind of shows that you're considerate of the user experience and you just want to make it a little bit nicer of an interaction than just having it do the jump that it can do. So great job there. Work XP, I think that's really clever. It took me like 2 seconds to put it together. And I like play video games. Like I know what XP stands for. Maybe your average hiring manager doesn't. So you could probably just put work or experience. You pick one of those labels, or work experience. You kind of have enough room in your navigation here, I think, to get away with it. So that would just be something to consider. Again, designing for the user a little bit more, but it's also a great way to show your personality as well. So, excuse me, I understand where you're going with that. And then projects down here, and I think this is nice. Maybe, yeah, I think that's looking pretty good here. And so that would also be. At a page? Oh, okay. So projects here. So I was not ready for that, but I think that is an interesting use of JavaScript here. So I guess, and let me undo this because I probably messed everything up a little bit more. Okay, so I think, I don't know why you're hiding this necessarily, because this is like really important information that you should be trying to show employers and prospective hiring managers, all those good folks. Like it's a cool usage of JavaScript here, but I think it would be better served by having this visible on the page. And that's also got SEO benefits for you as well, because then people or search engines, I don't think they couldn't a few years ago. I don't know if they can still have this issue. But if you hide something away with JavaScript, then they don't process it because it wouldn't be on the page. And so if you're hiding it with JavaScript, then all of a sudden search engines can't pick up on this either. So it's got some SEO benefits there as well if you don't hide those away. And then you got links to all this. So this looks good. There's not really an affordance that this is clickable other than me kind of hovering over it and seeing the cursor icon. So maybe including a link below, kind of saying view project or something like that, just to make it a little bit more reinforced to the user that this is something they can interact with, I think would be super helpful. And then, but overall, I think this is nice. And you've kind of got a little bit of explanation here, a little bit of context about what it is you're talking about. Again, maybe like a little bit of margin below this guy here. So margin, just to, again, work on that text hierarchy a little bit more. Let's see here. Yeah, just a little bit of separation there, just a little bit of white space. I think will go a long way to help reinforcing that text hierarchy, making it easier for the user to come in to scan and see the information here. And then we've got some skills. So we've got the design skills, we've got dev skills. I think this is great. I'm wondering if you could get away with having this next to each other. So you kind of save a little bit more vertical space, and it's just clear. The user can kind of see, oh, here are all the skills in one little spot. So I don't necessarily want to fix all this code around here, but maybe we could do it quickly if we set the width to 50. And maybe we can do it with this one. And maybe we can make the parent display flex or something like that. Maybe I don't know, but that would just be something to consider. So these two sections could go side by side with one another. So maybe we can do it with this tool here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. There we go. There we go. Kind of bringing these up next to each other. And I know that you've got more dev skills that you're highlighting here than design skills. So that would just be kind of either balancing them or even leaving them slightly unbalanced here. I think is fine as well. And so work experience, Layman School Web 17, Accenture, Summer Analyst, that's great. Maybe just like a little bit more context here. So maybe including like the dates that you work there, a little bit of a summary of what you worked on and what you had an impact on, I think would be super helpful as well. Lambda School jumps out as me as it's not necessarily work experience, but educational experience. I know we kind of blend those together a lot of times, but that would just be something that would catch my eye as a hiring manager. Like, oh, I don't know if this is categorized the way it should be necessarily. And then we've got the socials here. And again, I think maybe instead of having to just be kind of stacked in a list, considering maybe making it more horizontal, a little bit more externally consistent with how we see social icons, I think would be maybe appropriate, something to experiment with here. And the hire me please, I think that's kind of cute. Definitely a call to action at the end of the portfolio here. So something to to keep in mind here. I think it's a nice touch of personality as well. Let's see here. I think this is because I was using the tool. Yeah, so that's why that was over laid like that. So great. So wonderful portfolio there, Xander. I really appreciate you sharing with us so we could take a look at it here. Just again, little tweaks here, right? This is already a good portfolio, but how do we level this up and make it even better? And that's really all I'm trying to help here with. And like I said, take it or leave it. It's all yours, whatever you want to do with it. And that is that. So thank you all so much for tuning in this week. I had a lot of fun going over these. These are some great portfolios. So thank you for sharing and for continuing to share with me. I really, really appreciate it. I also want to announce that the Discord is finally here. So the Discord server where we can all kind of talk when these streams are not happening are still here. So if you follow me on Twitter, I just tweeted about it today. I'm going to work on getting it in the About section for the channel this evening or maybe in the next few days here. But yeah, so join the Discord if you want to just kind of chat with me and with everybody else in the community kind of in our off time here. I think it's going to be a really great addition to the community here. And of course, we have a special subscribers only private channel. So if you are a subscriber of the stream, you can just get a little bit more. Well, everybody can get probably the same amount of FaceTime with me right now because there's not too many people in the community just yet. But going forward, if you subscribe, you could just probably ping me a little bit easier within that channel there. So great. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you sharing some time on your Wednesday with me, and have a wonderful rest of your night. And we'll see you on bright and early on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. where I'll keep working on my portfolio redesign. So have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next time.